Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of the Zodcast. Of course, it's a Saturday night edition because tomorrow is the Super Bowl, so we didn't want to compete with that one way or the other. But I've been looking forward to doing this show with two really good friends of mine, Nicholas Broughton and Ross Geraci. Um, been friends with these guys a long time. Do a lot of Zodiac with, do a lot of DB Cooper with Nicky B. But Nicky B and I have also talked Zodiac before, so this will be really good. And these guys teamed up lately and went to some of the sites at Riverside where the murder happened in 1966 of co-ed Cheri Joe Bates. Of course, this is considered a non-canonical Zodiac crime, and we'll get into that. I know a lot of you guys already know the story, but we'll probably go over a little brief recap of what happened to her back in 1966. But without further ado, I'm going to bring Ross on. There's Ross, and congratulations on 1,000 subscribers over on Planet X Filmworks. And by the way, a link to Ross's channel is in the description of this video. Please hit it and sub to that channel. And bringing on Nicky B, and Nicky B, link to Nicky B's channel. Finding DB Cooper is also in the description, so please check out that link to that as well. And I don't know, I got this thing screwed up already. Some of my layouts are already screwed up, but hey guys, how you doing?
Doing great, man.
Good. How you doing, Drew? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a little while.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of fun to be on here, doing a little Zodiac this time around. You know, we're always doing Cooper, so it's kind of nice to switch it up a little bit. You know, I'm not probably as well versed in Zodiac as you or Ross, but I do dabble a little bit into it, and I'm excited to get into this Cheri Joe Bates stuff, which is kind of the case. I know it's not confirmed Zodiac, but I've had the most interest in it just from living in the Inland Empire where the crime happened there in Riverside.
Yeah, you're in Elsinore, so you're not real far at all. Of course, Ross isn't too far down in San Diego. So how did you two guys wind up going down back to the scene? I know Ross has been there before because he did a huge video on the Cheri Joe Bates murder back in '66 on his channel, and that's your top video, Ross. That was 30,000 views on that, by the way. And I went back and listened to Ken Maines, who did a big video on that. Of course, he was involved in a TV documentary about the Bates crime, and he had 39,000 on his. So he wasn't that much far ahead of yours at 30K. So that was a great video, went totally viral. And we're looking for more of those to come on Planet X Filmworks. So everybody, you don't want to miss the next one, because I know there's lots of great things to come on your channel regarding that. So how did you guys wind up down there for this trip?
Yes. So go ahead, Ross, if you want to give the tell of the tape.
Me and Nicky were up there doing Cooper last time, and then we've been talking behind the scenes about the Riverside activity and stuff. He's obviously a local, as he said, and Nicky sent me some stuff, so we both talked to you. You got your Corky ready, Drew?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
We were just get Corky ready. We're gonna need some goat screams. So we're talking to Tom Voight about Zodiac at Cooper. I couldn't make the last one, so Nicky was up there again. Tom's a local, and then he presented this. I don't know if he still has the webpage public, but you can still get to it. It's Zodiac's Dark Alley. It's a reference to basically this alleyway nearby to RCC that used to have this store, and there was even some old news footage of the store. Anyway, Nicky's been looking into the Riverside angle, so he hit me up, and I actually forgotten, how did it start, Nicky? We were just talking about going back to we were talking about the dark alley and then getting a feel for the location around the alleyway. That's what it was.
Yeah, I was down at CooperCon, and Tom and Angie Voight were there. I think they have attended the past 2 years. And they're awesome. And I was talking with Tom, and he suggested, he's like, if you want to do something interesting, he suggested to go check out his dark alley in Riverside. Apparently, he's persona non grata in Riverside. So yeah, he hasn't had the opportunity to go down there himself and check it out. So he kind of enlisted me and suggested it, and I said, sure. I've seen Ross's video, which he did a great job. It deserves all those views, if not more. And I encourage anyone who hasn't to check out his video. So yeah, he kind of enlisted us, and I hit up Ross. I'm like, yeah, you want to go down and check out the dark alley? Because I hadn't had the opportunity to even check out the RCC location. So Ross also took me, gracious enough, to take me down over there, and he kind of showed me the lay of the land of everything. And just doing that kind of stuff, doing it in person, it gives you a vantage point and kind of a feel for things that you can't get otherwise.
Yeah, I want to read this because I want to get this is just a real quick background on it. This is a newspaper article that came out when this murder happened. Of course, this is a possible Zodiac killer crime. We call that a non-canonical crime. And it says slain on way from library, police believe. Riverside, the body of an attractive blonde freshman co-ed was found under a tree on the campus of Riverside City College Monday morning. Detective said Cheri Jo Bates, 18, had been stabbed, but she had not been sexually molested. That's important, by the way. An autopsy indicated the girl put up a tremendous struggle with her assailant, Deputy Coroner Mike Riley said. Dr. F. Renee Moglin, autopsy pathologist, said the girl had been stabbed repeatedly in the lungs, arms, throat, and face. Janitor finds body. A janitor found Miss Bates' body around 6 a.m. It was sprawled face down on a dirt driveway alongside a framed bungalow storage facility at the edge of the campus quad. Her print blouse and salmon-colored capri pants were undisturbed but covered with blood. The co-ed's yellow compact car, it was a VW Bug, was found parked on the street 100 yards away. Its ignition key in place, but the ignition wiring yanked loose. 3 library books on American government lay on the front seat. Police speculated that Miss Bates' killer disabled her car and waited for her to return from the City College Library Sunday night, then sprang upon her when she tried to start her car. So that's just, that was a local police report at the time that it happened. I think there's some kind of, disagreement about what time it may have happened because, right, Ross, there was screams were heard in this courtyard around 10:30 p.m., but I think the police surmised this could have happened anytime between 9:30 p.m. and all the way up to like 10:15, 10:30 p.m. But that would have left Cheri. I think the library closed at 9, correct?
Yeah.
So she would have been milling around by herself for quite some time. So I think that's one of the mysteries within that is what time was she actually murdered?
Yep, the missing time. Yeah, absolutely.
And
that article,
I think Maine's.
Real quick, Nick.
Go ahead.
Did that police report just say her bug was yellow, Drew? Because I'm pretty sure it was green.
I think it was green. I don't know if that said yellow or not. I have to go back and look.
It said yellow when you anyway. Go ahead, Nicky.
I was just going. I know Maine's brought up something about daylight savings time, and
true. Was that true? Was there daylight savings at night?
That part's true, but Richard Grinnell did an excellent. He basically debunked me on that. So I thought she could misreport the timing of the screams due to daylight savings, and also like. Back then, like it wasn't like your iPhone changing for you at the exact minute. It was like, especially on a holiday, people were chilling out, relaxing, partying. So a lot of times they didn't even change it till hours later. You know what I mean? So like just total different mind state of
because it would change at midnight, I guess.
Time back then, but Grinnell has an article that he posted on there. I referenced that where he basically said like, yeah, it was, but it wasn't really a thing. It would, in other words, it wouldn't have thrown anything off, which I thought it could have, at the time.
Yeah, because I always wondered if the car, like maybe the assailant left with her for a while, came back and killed her. Something I always thought.
Well, so that's a common thing. Ray Grant went super in on that abduction theory. My only problem is he took the abduction theory very far, all the way past Lake Herman Road, which I highly disagree with, but I know we're talking Riverside. So he was trying to say due to the contents of the digestion in her stomach that under stress, under duress, it would digest faster or differently. I don't know if it was faster or slower. Sorry, I'm not a scientific expert, but anyway, his argument that it would change based on being kidnapped and based on being put under that duress. I don't know if there's any way to verify that, But
go ahead, Nicky.
Oh yeah, I mean it's what the difference between happening at 10:30 and 9:30. That's a big difference. If it happened at 10:30, library closes at 9, and like you said, like what's going on that whole that whole time
Hours,
period.
yeah, like over an hour. If
Yes.
it, closer to 10:30 when they heard the screams
Yeah.
in the courtyard. So what again was and I'll save Corky on this one. So what again was did Voight have a theory on the alley or what was that exactly? Because I don't think I've heard it before.
You could reiterate it, Nicky, because it's kind of your thing.
Yeah. So Voight believes it was an actual location, and he identified it, right?
Yeah.
And the kind of supporting evidence was that there aren't that many alleys in Riverside. There's only kind of a certain general area where there are some alleys, and the store in the confession letter, which I found interesting, it was referred in the confession letter as the little store, right? That's how he references. That's how he references it in the confession letter to Riverside PD. And when I tapped into this one Facebook group. It's I lived in Riverside in the 50s and 60s, and I've actually been pulling a lot of interesting information.
Those things are great. You taught me how to get into those Facebook groups.
He's found some great stuff in there.
That's great stuff. Yeah. So
yeah,
we're talking about
it's really invaluable. And I read about 6 or 7 comments at least where the locals are actually referring to that store as the little store.
Wow. So Nicky actually smoothed that out, which, when we started
That's
out,
good
I was
stuff.
kind of telling Nicky, like, the way Zodiac writes in these subliminal references, Drew, and these insinuations, he's always throwing his hat in the mix for not just Riverside activity, but these other ones that me and Drew.
Kathleen Johns, I gave a woman and her baby. I gave an interesting ride to. Yeah, this is how
shot a man in a car with a 38.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
With a 38. Yeah, so that's how this became a Zodiac crime. Of course, he alluded to it in a letter saying, "I see you have stumbled on my Riverside activity. There's a hell of a lot more down there."
Yeah.
Insinuating he's in Northern California, and these are down in Southern California. And of course, the way I don't know if it was ever even completely established how Paul Avery got the tip, because it was always a letter called the Slow Boat to China letter that alerted Paul Avery, hey, you need to go check out this murder down in Riverside. This could be Zodiac. And of course, there's also the Phil Sins connection, where I think Morford interviewed Phil Sins, and he said that he never called Paul Avery, but he may have sent him a letter. I can't remember, because it's been so long. But
I think originally what you said was it was the other way around, Drew. You said he said he didn't write him a letter, he called him.
I was
asking you, could Zodiac send that Slow Boat to China letter like a la the Concerned Citizen letter? You know what I mean? Like
that sounds like the Zodiac sent it. Where he made a reference to, I'll take a slow boat to China, somewhere that reference was made.
So then he's back in play, Nicky. You know what I'm saying? If you have him typing the confession letter, writing the slow boat to China. Anyway, it's just a theory.
Yeah, because that could have been Zodiac, just taking, trying to divert them, taking credit for it, Riverside activity, the slow boat to China letter. So he's just trying to, keep all the cops running around going crazy.
He gets the attention he wants from Riverside, but he gets them. He takes the heat off of the Bay, like Drew was saying. You know what I mean? He gets both things he wants. He wants press, but he doesn't want him on his canonical. You know what I mean? Just a thought, but,
and we know he'll take credit for crimes he didn't commit, or he can't prove he committed. Kathleen Johns, any of them that he alluded to. Of course, he claimed 33 murders in one letter and more.
37.
So that's why how this Bates becomes a non-canonical possible Zodiac crime.
Right, and it's kind of interesting in the confession letter. He says, I'm stalking your girls now in Riverside. I'm stalking your girls now. Mm-hmm. But to me, it was like if you're going to say that, then it would be perfect to leave, and then have the focus still there in Riverside, like something else is going to happen. Meanwhile, if it's Zodiac, he's now moved up to Northern California, and he's now operating down there, and he's created all this attention over in Riverside. So that also kind of fits. And then what I find most interesting is in the letter, he talks about calling the detective or whatever on the case, Kincaid, I believe is his name, right, Ross?
I believe it's the chief, Nick. Yeah. The
chief of police. Okay, yeah, Kincaid. So he talks about calling Kincaid. So that I think it's still unknown whether he called him before or after the murder of Cheri, but that would align, making the phone call would align with Ray Davis down in Oceanside, right, Ross?
And not in addition to that, as Drew is about to say, the canonical phone calls. More importantly, Nancy Slover, and Napa.
Yeah, Blue Rock Springs and Lake Berryessa with Slate.
So we have an unconfirmed. So these are my couple big things. I brought this up on my stream earlier. One, the unknown Zodiac letter. I don't know if you heard me say that, Drew, to the DMV.
That's I did hear that. I've heard about that before.
So that's what Rodelli said in Mount
DMV
Diablo.
letter.
Now we have an unconfirmed phone call in Riverside. So like I'm telling Nicky, I've always been like 50-50 or around where Drew's at or lower on Riverside. But the way Nicky is starting to line things up, he was able to sleuth out the little store. If the phone booth next to the little store tracks with the phone call in Riverside, like Drew and Nicky just said, then we've got 3 or 4 phone calls. We have multiple phone calls now.
That makes it seem more probable like a Zodiac crime. If of course... Right. Letters after the crime, Zodiac, a phone call like Berryessa and Blue Rock Springs, phone call like Ray Davis, because there was a phone call after Ray Davis. That's all interesting. So
changes it.
What was the letter that we learned 2 or 3 years ago that they got DNA from the flap at Riverside PD and they found out that it came from a hoaxer, and that was the worst written press release in the history of police departments because it didn't give you a lot of information. It said that they found the author of one of the letters sent in after Bates. I think it was maybe one sent to her father. I don't know if it was the Bates had to die. Was that the one?
It's the ones behind you right now. There's three Bates had to die letters, and then there's a variation. I said it in my episode. Of course, can't remember it now. You guys saw just how my stream went. But I think it says she had to die is the variation. I just can't remember if the she had to die was the one sent to Joseph Bates, and then the other 2 were the Bates had to die letters, which I think might be the case. Anyway, so Drew just told the story of how that was like debunked. And anyway, Voight is not feeling that. I've seen that. I want to ask Rodelli that when I interview him because I know a lot of people. You mean on that letter being debunked? Yeah,
by it being sent, they found the guy that sent it, and they determined that he could not have been the Zodiac. I don't know if it was because he was too young, but he basically said, "Hey, it was a prank. It was a sick prank. I'm sorry." Blah blah blah. But they obviously never released this guy's name. Didn't say how old he was at the time. No details at all.
Yeah, it said he was a disturbed youth or a disturbed teen. What Voight said is they didn't compare the DNA to the flaps and that they took his word for it. Huh. That's Tom's.
Interesting.
How did they find him then? If didn't they use the DNA to find him?
I don't know.
We don't even know.
I thought because he
that was the story. I thought they used forensic genealogy.
Yeah, or it was either that or he confessed. One of which,
Right. The story I heard was what you're saying, that they found him using forensic genealogy. I forgot where I heard that. Maybe it was might have been Ken Maines, I think.
Yeah, but other people are saying that they didn't compare the samples. So I mean, that's essentially.
What you mean the sample? You mean the sample that they got from the letter with the DNA from the Bates murder?
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. Why? Yeah, why wouldn't you? Why? Unless they were just so sure it couldn't have been him. Because it does degrade when you test DNA. It degrades.
Yeah.
That's why if you have anything left in the Bates case, and we'll talk about that. You want to get it down to the Woodlands, Texas, to who in Othram, who takes degraded DNA and gets full profiles from it, which is their specialty at Othram. They just broke 2 more. I mean, 2 more huge murder cases they just broke days ago.
I just saw that today.
Two different ones that are decades old. One had 2 suspects and they nailed them both. I think these guys are still alive, thank God, to face the heat. So those, if you have any DNA from Bates, get it down to the Woodlands quick.
Yeah,
I agree.
So the degraded sample under her nails at the time, or whenever this was, the 90s or whatever, came back as a Caucasian male. And the only problem is you only have a few billion of those in Southern California. So the Caucasian male doesn't really get you very far, especially if you look at geoprofiling in 66 and in Riverside. Drew, can you pull up the comment from Stephen Dunn?
Stephen had one a little earlier. I went to
RCC,
and we'll go back. And if we miss anything, guys, we'll get back. We'll get back to these. After the show, all 3 of us will go back.
I'm totally missing the chat here. Hold on, I'm totally missing the chat.
Okay, Riverside General had a psychiatric hospital right in front of Serrano's restaurant. alleyways along the wood streets. The store had fences all along the alley. And then
Yeah, that's so he seems to be a local, and if you can go to his one before that about
this is the one I wanted to get to. Yeah, because I didn't want to miss this.
So
He went to RCC. There was a small general store with an alleyway right there. Wonder if the police ever looked into the Carcraft VW repair only. That's a good point.
I think that's our store, Nicky, that he's talking about. I'm pretty sure
The Carcraft.
No, the small general store.
Oh, the general store, right.
Yeah, because it was. We have the name of it, Nicky.
Right.
There was that YouTube video. It was the Asian. It was like an Asian market, an Asian couple or whatever.
Right. It went by a few names, or it was known by a few different ones. So like I think Andrew Market was one. Something with a I want to say Kawa. I remember I found a picture actually someone drew of it. And then it was also referred to. I don't know if it was ever named this, but I saw it referred to a lot as Bandini's store, and then it was known as the little store.
Mm-hmm. Steven said the store was odd.
Asian owned, yes,
like you said when he went there.
That's the store we went to check out, and what we were trying to figure out is we were following the alley, and it kind of stopped after a certain point. But we're wondering if back in '66, if it looks like it could have ran all the way down to RCC.
Yeah,
which I thought that was interesting if it
Nicky
did.
And I found Bandini, I think, Nicky, I'm trying to remember. It's 55410 Magnolia was the former address, and then I think Bandini was the cross street, wasn't it, Nicky?
The cross street, yes, exactly,
so
correct.
Right at that intersection, Drew, Magnolia, Bandini, then the alleyway is right there. So I posted a short on my YouTube with Nicky's cameo of us basically just doing a short 1 minute walk and talk down that alley. But what Nicky's referring to, I'm trying to put you guys into our perspective to see what we saw. At the very end, going north to RCC, it was fenced off from, I think it's like, I looked at it on Google Maps, like 2 or 3 blocks of properties. But me and Nicky circled around in the car to the other side up to RCC parking lot, and the alleyway does pick up back there. So essentially it's just cut off in the middle. So what me and Nicky are theorizing that if those properties weren't there in '66, if it was dirt road or whatever it was at the time, it probably went straight through. In other words, directly from RCC, directly to that store, and possibly to that phone booth there. You know what I mean? If that's in play. So
that's interesting.
That's
good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think whoever wrote that the confession letter, whether if it was Cheri's killer or not, he definitely seems like he was either a local or he spent a considerable amount of time there, to know the little store reference and everything like that. So we got at least someone there that was prowling around by the little store, prowling, looking at women, So
and the confession letter
was
the confession letter we know was not debunked. It was because that was typed. The confession letter is a typed letter, so that one was not the one that they debunked. That was one of the handwritten.
Right. It hasn't been debunked. There isn't anything really in there that wasn't already like in the papers, in the press.
Yeah, True Detective.
I think
magazine article.
In the True Detective thing. Yeah, I think there was like one thing that she I forgot, cutting her throat or slashing her throat, or there was a little detail in there that I know one of the law enforcement officers wrote in the letter to somebody else and mentioned that same thing. So that little detail wasn't in there, but it kind of does check out with other things that I've seen.
Right.
So yeah, the confession letter is interesting. I haven't ruled it out. There's some things obviously that doesn't kind of jive in there, but it seems like he was just kind of trying to throw off the investigation if he was the actual killer. So the way I see kind of some of those things.
It could have been Zodiac writing that letter
100%.
but not killing her and just taking credit, because
100%.
we know that Cheri, one thing, she put up a hell of a fight. I mean, she put up a massive fight, struggle for her life, but she was, almost decapitated, stabbed far more violently than even Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa. So that seemed personal. Like, this assailant knew her or had some real big problem with her personally, unlike Zodiac and Berryessa, where it was all about got rejected or something like that.
And I kind of thought that at first too. And if that's the case, then obviously BB seems kind of like the best that fits that kind of scorned, lover kind of thing. But I've kind of gone back on that.
Didn't you say, Drew?
Yeah,
BB's super tall. He's too big too. They're all too big.
He's too big too. That's why.
Yeah, that's a good point because we're talking about what the Timex wristwatch. I don't know if it was inches, but what was the size of the band was pretty small. Someone with a small wrist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I kind of tend to lean to Cheri's killer being somebody smaller, which is kind of one of the big knocks for me about him being Zodiac, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because Zodiac's described as a stockier guy, a bigger guy. If you go with Cecilia, you're up to 6 feet. We're talking about, we call him BB. His alias is Bob Barnett. And this is her ex-boyfriend at the time. Well, that's another interesting thing is because all of his friends claimed that he was dating Cheri. Cheri was already engaged to a guy named Dennis up in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So the story was that she got engaged with Dennis. I don't remember his last name. I'm sure you guys know
Highland.
it, but Highland. Thank you. And then it came back, and then BB found out that his girlfriend or the one he thought was his girlfriend just got engaged to another guy. So he was enraged by this, and he supposedly told a couple of buddies, "I'm going to go pay her a visit and beat her up or whatever," something along those lines. But
here's the thing about that story. He got a phone call and he said that B word is at the library, that B word's going to library.
Yes.
Everyone's like, what phone call did he get in 66? Because it wasn't on an Nextel or a Razor,
Yeah,
Right.
you didn't have cell phones back in the day. Who was he calling? The phone booth down at that store you're talking about? Or?
they were all there. It was a line. There was a line of the. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, he just
So like when I'm hearing this stuff, and then also I guess all of her friends being BB's friends being interviewed, and they're all saying that, oh yeah, BB was going out with Cheri. They were all under this impression that they were kind of going out.
That's what
and then that whole thing about getting.
All said that BB's friends all said that they were dating, but Cheri's friends said they didn't even know him, basically, or like they didn't have no knowledge of her dating him.
Okay. So me and Drew just said he lied about going to breakfast with like Cheri and her dad. He could have been lying to her friends about dating her. Like, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't.
And then maybe he was embarrassed.
Yeah, right. He could have made it
when she came back to Riverside, engaged to Dennis Island.
Boom.
Maybe he was embarrassed. But so the motive is there. But like you guys are saying that watch belonged to somebody with a smaller wrist. We know that he's a big guy. He's a pretty good sized guy, very athletic.
I still think it was almost random. Like, me and Nick have bounced back and forth. Why have to disable the distributor cable if you know who she is? You go, hey, Rick, you want to grab a ice cream after the library? You want to grab a soda pop? And Main's brought this up. I don't agree with everything on Main's episode, but he saw certain evidence I didn't because they had the connection. You guys have seen the History Channel, so RPD was going to let me walk in there. I'm a YouTuber, but he brought up the fact that there's no argument, there's no yelling, there's no screaming, and so if it's the scorned lover scenario, they're at least going to get into it before it starts. At the very least, someone's going to hear something. It's just dead silence.
You guys are moving me off of BB.
Right. Yeah. And the whole thing about this being a crime of passion. I think it's just because her killer was just a smaller guy. And he was struggling to Cheri put up a hell of a fight. He was struggling to subdue her. So I think just all of those stabs and, just the violence of it was just Cheri just fought for her life, and he had to make sure he was going to stop her, which required that kind of.
That's a good point, because a smaller guy seems to make more sense because she's putting up such a struggle because she was very petite. But that makes sense because if you're as big as BB or Ross Sullivan or a stockier guy and whoever Zodiac you like,
put her right
that makes more sense that it's a smaller guy. We know it was a 3-inch blade. I mean, it was enough to do a lot of damage, but we're talking about a foot-long blade, according to Brian Hartnell at Berryessa. So that's
barely a 3-inch blade. It could have been anything
barely
from a 1.5 inch to. I really think so. I have my grandfather's old Navy World War II pocket knife, how they used to have those, and I really think it was probably a Navy. I don't know if it's necessarily Navy, but I think it was probably just one of those military style pocket knives. And it's the decapitated thing is like a bit of a misnomer. The laceration to the carotid artery is the cause of death, and so there are extreme like 13, 14 strikes, but like Drew said, they're very they're not deep, So
because it's only barely 3 inches, so it'd be hard to decapitate somebody with a 3 inch.
Which is not what the confession letter says, gents. Like we were saying, it says she went to the slaughter like a lamb. Essentially, I overpowered her, imposed my will on her. That's not what the crime scene shows. You know what I mean? You actually struggle. You know, like Drew said, she was small, but she was also a cheerleader. She was also an athlete, so she wasn't pathetic. You know what I mean? It was way more of a fight, as Nicky just said. It was way more of a fight than the assailant thought it was going to be. He thought he was just going to wipe the floor with her, and it didn't happen, you know? So
yeah, can you see that map up there? I stole this from Rich. You know, it shows it was a green beetle. You're right. The yellow was a mistake. Tony Dinelli pointed that out. That was a error in reporting, but it was a green Volkswagen Beetle. So she was roughly like 75 yards down that street from where the car was, and her body was I don't know what. That around that corner, or about 75 yards from the car. So
yeah, the car is Terracina. That's the one with the Volkswagen there. And then I forgot myself what that side street is called. But yeah, Nicky, I brought you to that exact spot. That's the green now. It's basically just landscaping for that big new library building on the left. But then the other thing me and Nick were postulating on is there's you see where Rich has the library entrance marked. That's the main gate to the building's called the Quadrangle. But then there's also entrances over there on that left side going in the direction of where she was found. So a lot of people ask me which entrance could she have come and gone out of, and could someone have held her in the building or either brought her out of the building. And so I don't know, we don't really have any definite answers on any of those questions. But as far as the Tucker torpedo, Drew, Rodelli has told me that Kel Cavalier apparently did own one. I was telling Nicky,
I've never heard of a Cavalli connection to Riverside before. I didn't even know he ever mentioned that.
There's quite a few actually. So he was okay. So that's going to be interesting.
And you're going to have him on Tuesday night, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have him on Tuesday night. Cavalier's at the race.
Yeah, that's right, because he was a car racer. Yeah, so that's interesting. I want to hear that. I like Mike's work.
Trust me.
We have different suspects, no doubt, but I appreciate his work.
Rodelli's amazing. I don't really agree with him on much of Cavalier or Riverside, but like overall, he's amazing on the case.
Yeah, he's a great researcher, no doubt.
There's only 48 in the United States, so
Cavalli, you had to be pretty wealthy. Like Cavalli was a import sports car dealer, very wealthy guy, so he could.
But why drive the car? Everyone could spot though. If you're an importer car salesman, you're going to take the most common car. You're going to take the Volkswagen or the one that just that you're an importer. You know how many cars are in rotation, so you can take the most common one. So I can spot you. You're not going to take the rare car that is one of a kind. That what I mean. That's what I was telling Nicky.
There was a movie about those cars. 20 years ago that was really good. That third headlight, distinctive look with that third headlight.
So I think
didn't that come from Graysmith?
Yeah, but you know what? There's discrepancy on the third light. The third middle light, is also the oxidized Studebaker. So when it was originally reported as a torpedo, I believe RPD came back and they were like, we think they just called out the torpedo because of that middle headlight that Drew was just talking about. We think it's actually an oxidized Studebaker because it's an older Studebaker with a bad paint job. How is Kel Cavalier going to have a crappy paint job when he's one of the richest guys?
That guy was a car dealer,
Northern California, but. Arthur Lee Allen supposedly at the race as well. I mean, I'm not a Seawater reference, but if you have two Zodiac suspects at the race, it does start to get a little weird, Nicky, with the synchronicity. Also, Richard Marshall living in Riverside at the time, so I'm not saying any of them.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know. Yeah, Rick Marshall's another early Zodiac killer suspect who wasn't a bad one actually.
More synchronicity, but that brings up a thing. So. In my version of the Beeson theory, which Drew's probably not the biggest fan of because no one else does this but me, Arthur Lee Allen as a letter deliverer for Cheney dropping off the typed confession letter, because if he's in town, you at the very least could, and I don't know why they would be doing that in 66 before the Zodiac crimes, because the whole thing is the Zodiac mythos. But anyway, I think I bounced some of those theories off Nicky, and I'm not sure what he's thought.
Yeah, I know the confession letter. It was dropped off locally. It didn't have any, didn't have a stamp or anything like that. But postmarked Riverside. So, that's interesting stuff. And then that watch is also, I think, an underlooked and interesting clue, right? Because I think it came back that you can only get it in I think overseas. I believe in the UK, right?
Yeah, it was made in the
UK.
UK. According to Mains, it was made in the. It's a Timex, by the way. Cheap
Yeah.
watch. It was like a $9 watch back in the day. But you're right. It came from England, and I guess somehow had a connection to Arkansas. I can't remember. He said something about it came from England or made it or manufactured in England, and then
I remember that. I think
sold in Arkansas or something like that.
I think it had like GB
Some
on the
were
back
shipped,
for like
I think.
Great Britain, right? Something
Yeah.
like that. So and
Yeah,
then,
so that's an interesting clue. Go ahead, Ross.
So the swindles thing, real quick, and this is like I'm not going to give it any credence because it's never been confirmed, but Drew knows what I'm about to say. They say that Johnny Swindle's Timex watch disappeared at Seaside Slayings, and it had paint specs from him repainting his apartment, and so they said that one had paint specs on it, and so that
they said that this watch here, the one they found near at the murder site.
Supposed trophy that carries over from Swindles, but it's never been confirmed. And I know they sent the watch away for testing. I don't know if the results were ever made public, but it wasn't.
They found paint specs on this watch.
Yeah,
and then you mentioned this earlier on your show, Ross, today, but they did something unprecedented here, and Mains talked about it too. What was it? A week after her murder, they did a complete reenactment of it, where they had everybody that was at the library that night. The cars try to park in the same areas. I mean, they put this whole, I can't even imagine how you would pull that all together. I mean, I can see college students getting them, but they got everybody that was there except for like one or two people didn't show up. So then they kind of were looked at maybe as suspect because they didn't show up to the reenactment.
I heard everything but that last part. Sorry, Drew.
So there were like two or three people didn't show up to do the reenactment. Okay. So they kind of got Nicky, looked at.
Remember when I told you about this? So they like Drew recounted it perfectly. So they told everybody to come back, wear your same clothes, drive your same car, because they wanted to see if they could get the Studebaker or see if anybody had, any of the males have scratches. Now I was telling Nicky, I think all of the men gave hair and I think possibly more DNA, whatever they took, saliva, DNA. I don't know exactly what they took, but they all gave samples, because there were a lot of dudes that were like, hey, like, whoever did this to Cheri is scum. Like, I just want to help out. So a lot of the male students just came forward, out of the goodness of their heart. But like Drew said, there was supposedly, I was telling Nicky, you remember the story, Nicky, there was this heavy-set bearded man and a blonde girl, apparently a blonde girl that's not Cheri, that are talking in the library that day, and then they're never seen again. So we've always wondered, like, are they the people in the Studebaker? I was telling Nicky, did that guy have the girl talk to Cheri? That way she's not getting approached by some weird, heavy-set, stocky dude in the shadows in the alleyway. It's like, hey, you have the girl go talk to her. I don't know. That could be a thing. And then the other person of interest, Drew and I were just talking about off air, was the cigarette smoking man in the alleyway. The student walks by, sees a dude, and they nod to each other. And then I don't know, I'm not 100% sure if she called him an Air Force man or if it came out that he was dressed like an Air Force man, but there's the Air Force man story. And of course, the four Mexican, like landscaper worker dudes they're actually sitting there when she pulls up. So those guys are cleared because they were gone by the time. But as far as the cigarette smoking man or the cigarettes, Drew, I think we supposedly still have the cigarettes. So, I don't know.
The Riverside PD still has the cigarettes?
I'm pretty sure it's in evidence. So
wow. So unlike DB Cooper, they managed to hold on to cigarettes.
RPD did something. They just didn't do anything with it.
And another thing I was going to say about the watch is that should be a good source for skin sales. Because if he's wearing it on his wrist.
Yeah, I think Okay, so here's the thing. Morph had Susanna Ryan on was that Zodiac? I think it was Zodiac speaking, and she has worked on both Ray Davis and Cheri Jo Bates. So she's the person that would know. I forget, I sent Nicky her website. So if her lab didn't come up with it, then I totally agree with you guys. It's time to go to Orthram, because you know what I mean?
Oh, it's already time to go to Orthram.
Now,
it's already time.
Now I believe they tested the watch for the sweat, and then I don't know. I want to say she tested the pants, the watch, and then also Ray Davis's belt was lifted up when he was tossed out of the alleyway. Of course, we don't know if the assailant was wearing gloves for that touch DNA. So she worked on both cases. I haven't heard much beyond that other than what she said. But you should get her on, Drew. I think you guys would have a great show. She knows.
Yeah, she knows her stuff when it comes to DNA. I just recently watched that Morph. I think I forgot the name of it. But she was on there. I don't remember her talking much about the watch. So
Yeah.
I want to say that I don't think they worked with the watch. I know they worked with the pants.
Yeah. I thought she said they didn't get
And
a sample or they didn't get a good sample, but it was super. I don't want to like misquote anything for Drew's audience. It was a
yeah,
long time ago before
I might
heard
have
that.
missed it. They might have taken a shot at the watch. Not exactly sure, but
Yeah,
I mean,
think
like I
for
said,
some
I
reason,
think it'd
'cause
be a
it's
good
leather.
source.
Yeah, I think it's like the way that the absorption of the leather. I think there possibly
Sweat
was
or-
an issue,
yeah.
but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I think that
especially-
definitely warrants. Yeah,
But I mean, as far as like I told you, me and Nicky walked the grounds, Drew. We started at the alleyway. We shot that short. Then I brought him up to RCC so he could see the quad. So what was your take on the actual spot, Nicky, outside of that library? Because it's not far from the quad at all. It's only steps. So you got to assume if it's 9 p.m. and I thought they said there was like 75 people in the library, Drew, even though it was super small and cramped. So absolutely nobody is walking by in this 2 hours that this event transpires, like that didn't see or hear anything until the screams. And I think that was a lady in her house that Drew was talking about. So it's like, that's the mystery. It's that if it happened right there, and then of course me and Nicky were saying they did install the lights later, Drew, but that's because students complained, not till after Cheri.
Oh yeah, well, somebody was killed there, of course.
Well, yeah. So
yeah.
that's
And
time to draw
and
the
one
line.
big thing is, I know it's been mentioned before, but I on that Riverside group, there's comments from people that knew her, and they reiterate this, that she was afraid of the dark. So I don't.
Wow.
And that alley was dark. Like Rosh just said, there was no lights there back then. They had
That's
That's the
installed
alley right
afterwards.
there.
No,
That's
no,
the alley right there.
this is the Zodiac alley. This is the one across from the store, Bandini and
Okay.
Magnolia. The other spot,
Okay,
Oh,
I
yeah.
wasn't sure if that was the right one or not.
yeah, the other alley's no longer existing because it's like
Oh,
a
it's
massive
gone. It's
library.
already
The
long
two
gone.
small buildings are
Yeah.
gone. It's that new library that's built.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not technically like I mean, I wouldn't even call it, like, it was between two. It's like a dirt pathway between two houses, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
you could
almost a
call. I mean, you could
driveway.
call it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's almost like a dark drive, like a dark driveway. Like
that was it, Drew.
you
That
can
last
kind of have
one.
a shot of it there. Yeah, that last shot, the one
Yeah, if you
before
go-
that, you can kind of see it.
So that bottom left, that's the exact spot.
Yeah.
I think that's Cheri in the background there, although I don't particularly
It
like
is.
posting that one myself.
Back by
Yeah,
the tree.
I
Yeah.
see
So
it.
there was
Yeah,
there was no lights there. So why she would go there willingly? That's I'm having kind of trouble reconciling that, given her fear of the dark. So that's that's where I'm kind of leaning towards an abduction. But like Ross said, it's just kind of baffling
A
that
failed abduction,
nobody
basically,
saw
yeah,
her.
for sure.
Yeah.
A failed abduction. So also, like you said, the fact that there was no sexual assault. Well, she put up such a fight. Maybe he did want to sexually assault her, but he couldn't.
Didn't
Because
get
the
to it.
fight
Yeah,
she put,
that's-
he didn't
that's
have the
what I always
he
thought.
didn't have the
So that could have been his
opportunity.
goal.
Yeah,
That could have been
Yeah.
his goal, but she fought so viciously,
Yep.
defending herself, that he wasn't able to do that.
yeah. Either to take her
Right.
away or do something to her. And I think she figured out
Right.
pretty fast that he's not going to get tools. He's not going to fix my car, especially if she didn't know him.
Right, and like you guys are
Right.
saying, she got stabbed that brutally because he's having to fight back.
Well, because if she gets so, my example for this is when we talk the desk bottom poem, Drew, which at this point I'm starting to think has less and less anything to do.
I
with
never
Cheri
thought
or-
the desktop poem tied into anything. I just thought it was
or,
interesting.
or Zodiac. You have the 1965 case of Roland Lynn Taft, where he ended up, I think, doing and getting incarcerated. I think for raping a girl, but in 65 he tries to stab a girl at RCC. He tries to do something to her, ends up stabbing her, and she gets away. That sounds much more like what the desktop poem is referring to, because it says, essentially it doesn't say she got away, but like
Yeah, spurting,
it doesn't-
spittering, whatever.
it talks about the blood getting stabbed, but doesn't say anything
Yeah.
about her dying, and said like it says like, oh well, I'll get her next time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it makes it sound like that one got away. So and
Mhm.
Cheri, as we know, obviously didn't get away, and then obviously we have no idea when that thing was written. My theory is it was written before '66 or sometime after '65, and it was referring to the Roland Lynn Taft thing. So you've got him, you've got the cigarette smoking man, the bearded man in the library. Then you have what Morph brought up, which is one of the guys who lived in Cheri's house, which I posted a picture of on my YouTube channel. Before her, he ended up being a mentally disordered sex offender that got incarcerated as well. A guy that actually lived in her house. So he's in play as well. Then you've got Bud Kelly.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bud.
Brought up in the comments, and then he's in play as well. So
Cat Daddy says if Cheri's killer wore boots, college kids in a library don't wear boots. It must be the Hispanic landscapers or total stranger. And I'm kind of, after talking to you guys tonight, I'm leaning this way. I'm like, I'm getting off of the BB train.
Sullivan wore boots though. He was a student.
Yeah, but like you were saying earlier, like before we started the show, Sullivan's a big guy.
Way too big. He's way too big.
Way too big. He was 300 pounds. We know he might have been a little less, but we know in '67 when he got arrested in Santa Cruz, where he moved later after Riverside, he was every bit of 300 pounds and 6'3". Big guy.
He's got Pickwickian syndrome is essentially what he passed
Yeah,
away
Pickwickian syndrome where he it's like an apnea thing that caused him to gain weight. So yeah, he would have been a hulking guy. No way.
Uncontrollable.
And I think even Maine said that he there's not much doubt that the watch belonged to the attacker.
Yeah. And that watch probably wouldn't fit Ross's wristband. Ross was also blonde, and the hair on her palm was brown. So
yeah, the palm, and that's what Maine said too. He said that there was DNA under the fingernails, like hairs under the fingernails. But I think Maine said that those later came back to possibly being Cheri's that were under her nails. I think that's what he said. But he was firm in the belief that the hair was from the assailant.
And one thing I also wanted to mention about the boots or whatever, they matched it to the same type that Cleo, the guy that the groundsman that found Cheri's body, had that same pattern.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. He was an African American guy.
That's what Maine said, but I never heard that from anywhere else but Maine. So he might.
Yeah, tell us about that guy. Is he the one that found her? Who's the one that found her?
He found her. Yeah.
Yeah. He was the groundsman in RCC. So he's the one that found her.
He was an African American guy. He was an African American guy.
So he was immediately.
So that couldn't have been his hair. Obviously, that's not his blonde hair that was in her palm.
No. And he was immediately eliminated from the white Caucasian degraded skin under her nails. It was for sure a Caucasian male that.
And he was pretty up there in age at the time, if I remember correctly.
I think 60s, 50s.
Yeah, 60s. But his footprint. Obviously, if you found her body, his footprints would always be there as well. So that kind of muddies the water on the boot, kind of on the boot sting a little bit for me. So.
Yeah,
I don't put too much stock into it, just unfortunately because it's just a little bit
it's more
muddied
of a military
water.
Dress shoe, but here's the thing: Joseph Bates working at March, Drew, and then her brother also being a
March Air
serviceman,
Force Base.
So
her dad was
some enemy of her brother, or her dad. I suppose could be in play.
Yeah. So since Lisa mentioned it, let's talk about Bud Kelly, because we know Bud Kelly got arrested. I don't know how many years ago for child molestation. Of course, he was a lot older at this time, but was he at the scene? Was Bud Kelly worked for RPD, former Riverside Police Department officer? Did he work the scene? Or did he? But I thought Kelly got the case years later, kind of like George Bauer did with Zodiac. I always thought that Bud Kelly was assigned to the case years later. Like he was not. Was he even working for RPD in '66?
It was my understanding he was. I thought he was on the scene and he did take control of the case later, but he was also there. Now, what Tony said about him taking home her diary was correct, but I don't believe he kept it.
Wow, I don't. If I knew that, I've forgotten it.
I think he was just taking it home and reading it at nights, which not typical, reasonable officer, behavior. At least not by today's standard. I don't think, Nicky. So that guy is strange, and then he does have gets involved in this weird church group and does molest these girls. He's in his 70s when he gets locked up.
Yeah, unfortunately, Bud Kelly, I think, it's kind of tainted this case in a way. Like, I tend to think all that stuff on BB was tend to believe that it was kind of manufactured by him, because it doesn't make any sense. The phone call at the
That's what Tony was saying.
playing basketball.
That makes a lot of sense, Nicky.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what's
and
your
then
guys?
That makes sense to me now.
all
This
of
is
the
coming
friend
together.
all of the friends saying, "Oh yeah, he dated Cheri, he dated Cheri." You know, all of this is try to make him look guilty, right? And
Yeah.
I just think this was all kind of cooked
And,
up by
Okay.
Bud, which
and Bud Kelly was in a perfect position to keep the light on BB.
Yeah. So that's the other problem with BB Drew is like the Bud Kelly angle, which Nick just raised, and there's certainly many issues there. So Howard Davis went down there and he spoke to Bud Kelly, and he actually gave me some amazing research when I did my episode 3. He helps a lot with behind the scenes. I haven't talked to him in a minute, but on Riverside he helped me quite a bit, and he said that the two dudes that like supposedly passed those lie detector tests that gave like the statement on Kelly.
BB's friends, you mean?
I guess it was BB's friends. He said that those dudes were drug addicts that were trying to get off another case. So they were willing to just try to throw names to try to get out of their own charges. I mean, I haven't verified that with my own independent reporting, but that's that came from. I trust Howard Davis. He did speak to Kelly, and he found some. Even the thing that I know people don't necessarily agree with his Bruce Davis suspect is Zodiac, but what he came up with as Bruce doing pipe fitting and welding. I know another weird pipe fitting thing, Drew. It sounds like crack poof, but pipe fitting and welding for the reconstruction. He said that like even though like other people said Bruce was never down there, that he could possibly place him either working on the RCC construction or a nearby construction project. And he actually found this
explain the paint on the watch.
Yeah, and he actually found this article where this woman claimed like this dude came up to her, pushing her in the parking lot. I'll send this to you, Nicky, and was like almost about to assault her, like almost a Cheri situation. And apparently, like his name was Bruce, and like so that was I have the quote from him that was. Now I don't know that was Bruce Davis, but a guy that was like a worker there named Bruce that apparently used to like whistle at and harass girls, and then almost got into it with another girl. So it was an interesting spiderweb avenue. I don't know that it went anywhere, but again, we're literally talking just Riverside, and there's that much synchronicity. Look at all the suspects we've laid out, and
all the ties, and then going back to Arthur Lee Allen, it was Arthur Lee Allen did not go report to school the next day. Of course, Cheri was murdered on Halloween Eve, '66, and Allen did not go. He took a day off that next day after the crime. It's the first time in his history of a teacher that he had ever done that, which always sticks out. I think that was proven to be true.
I didn't know that.
Not that I think it. Yeah, that's true. But not that I ever thought Allen was the murderer of Cheri Jo Bates. But Allen was a big guy too, so the watch doesn't fit.
You want me to? Apparently,
low boys. I'll try.
That was true, and obviously Allen knew Riverside from the car races. He went to Riverside a lot. That's that when he would come down and visit his brother in Pomona, because remember, Pomona and Riverside you guys know better than I do, are right beside each other. Obviously, Cheney has Pomona connections, not just going to college there. His wife is from there. So it would have been very known what would have happened when Bates was murdered. It was pretty big news. But I think when Bates was murdered, that even made all its way up to the Bay Area. That was big news when she was killed. It wasn't with all the crime in California, it was still stood out.
Well, True Detective magazine picked it up, and that we pretty sure Zodiac was reading that. You know what I mean? Regardless of whatever else the situation was, we know he was following true crime news, California true crime news particularly. Let me know if my volume's boosted up. Life After Life was saying I was still a little bit low. So let me know if I'm.
Thanks,
if I'm
Keith.
I just raised it up. Let me know if I'm better.
Just a tad. Yeah, if you can just tweak it up just a little bit, it'd be good.
Bump up some more. Bump it up.
Yeah, let's go back to Sullivan, because we were talking about it. Chris says he doesn't think Sullivan was Zodiac, but he does think he murdered Bates, and a lot of people still think that. They don't think that he was Zodiac, but they think that he could. But like we were saying earlier, the watch would not have fit him, and we're pretty confident that the watch belonged to the attacker, and there's no way that watch band, because it was already. Let me see if I can put it back up. I mean, when they found the watch, it wasn't undone. And Cheri, no doubt, was the reason that watch came off. But the watch was already, like, nobody put the band back into the clasp, right? I mean, because that's how they knew how the attacker wore it. Like, what size his wrist was based on the clasp still being there. Like, it came apart probably on the other side of the watch face.
Right. Like I think you would just keep it like that. It'd it'd be a good piece of evidence in case to clear a suspect. Like, you just put it around, take the band, put it around his wrist.
Yep.
If it fits, well, he's still in play. If it doesn't fit, you must have quit. You know,
yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't have shrank like OJ's gloves. I mean, it's just a cheap watch, but if that clasp was how they found it, we know she put up a hell of a fight. We're pretty certain that she's the reason that watch came off of him, and in the melee going on, there he just couldn't think to pick that up, and he must have been sweating bullets that anybody would have remember. I mean, unfortunately, it was a common watch. It wasn't a Zodiac watch. It wasn't a Rolex or something that not too many people had. But there's no way that watch would have fit Ross Sullivan. He was just too big of a guy. He was a creepy guy, and that's how he becomes a Zodiac suspect, because he looks like the sketch, and he comes from Riverside. I think they claimed that he didn't know Cheri, but knew people in common and things like that.
The story was, I think, one of his brothers married like her best friend or one of her friends. That's
some connection with the brother, because Ross Sullivan had two brothers.
Which is interesting. And then, of course, I was telling Drew, so he plays like apparently there's a review of him in his live performance of this play that he was the outstanding standout actor in his role as Beelzebub, the demon in this performance, which kind of fits into the play Mikado angle you've been looking into, Nicky.
I was going to ask Nicky about that next. The Mikado that was done at Riverside Junior High in '66, I think.
Yep. And then he plays a serial killer in a short film, which is never released. I mean, I just picked him in my episode just because, like, hey, of putting up all the mainstream names, it looks like this. But that dude has the most Z-chronicity ever for a guy who's really not even from the Bay Area. Later on, when he moves to Santa Cruz, Drew, there's supposedly that stationery store that has the downwards triculating lettering that supposedly is like the same pattern as the Slaves in Paradise. So the synchronicity with Ross Sullivan is insane. I'm not necessarily saying it leads anywhere, and I don't think he's the Zodiac, but there's that,
Yeah, on paper it's intriguing. The guy's definitely a strange brew, but again, it just none of the evidence matches him. I mean, if there were boot prints of someone with a 10 and a half, 11, 10 and a half, 11 size, 12, a big boot print there. If the band was bigger, I'd be all over Ross. But just none of the evidence fits. I don't think he would have had a problem with Cheri. He would have been able to overpower her easily.
Same with BB was a big guy. BB was a good sized guy, very
for sure.
Another
athlete.
He's an athlete. He's still a big guy. He's still alive. Doesn't live in the United States.
Right.
We know who he is.
And here's the thing with BB too. That another reason why I don't like him as Cheri's killer is because BB knew where Cheri lived, right? BB so we know Cheri's dad. We know Cheri's dad was gone that day. So if BB was stalking her, he would probably just went right to her house and probably did her.
That's a great point.
Would have killed her at her house instead of out in.
You guys have me off of BB. I'll tell you that. You guys have me off of BB. Not that I was going to swear to it, but
for sure. How long did it take us to get to 4195 via San Jose, Nicky, from RCC? Like not even 10 minutes, right? 5 minutes. So it's literally what Nicky's point is. It's a 5-minute ride from the RCC location. Why risk a library on a college campus? Why risk a building full of student witnesses on a college campus? You could get her Halloween night. You could put on a mask. And
good point. It was Halloween Eve. It was the day before Halloween.
Yeah, so close enough. If you're that's what I'm saying. If you're planning it, you can have everything lean in your favor.
People wouldn't have thought much of it.
Drag her out of the RCC library with 1,000 witnesses around in the basically college parking lot.
No one would have thought a thing about it.
That's why I think it was some lurker. He was lurking around there looking for prey, and he saw Cheri. Either that or he knew Cheri from around town.
He must have known it was her car because he had already saw her parking the car, and then he disabled the distributor.
Exactly. So there was some kind of a tell there that he was either sitting there watching, and then he saw Cheri come out of the car, and she's like, okay, this kind of fits my my fantasy. This kind of this matches my target that I'm looking for.
Yep.
Or this was someone that has already seen Cheri around town. He kind of already been fixating on this, and
Yeah,
maybe he's
very
driving
attractive
and
girl.
right, and maybe he's
Beautiful. I mean,
he's driving by.
she stood out. She was that pretty.
So there is that one story, Drew. I think Nicki's kind of coming to where she's driving back, and her friend said she saw her driving, waved to her, and Cheri didn't wave back, didn't see her. And then I don't know if this is very.
I don't remember that.
I don't want to go too deep into the stuff that I can't guarantee. But the story is the car was following her at that time. So tracking with what Nicki just said, if the Studebaker followed her, I'd like to know her if she just goes straight from the house to RCC Library, or does she gas up on the way? Like, I don't know if we know the exact timeline, but like Nicki's saying, if someone saw her along the way and then followed her to see where her car was gonna park, it makes it an interesting angle. I don't know if there's any credence which way, but it just
plausible,
right?
So if it's the
And her car would have been very, very easy to spot. It was I think it was green, or like I don't know if it was lime green. I've heard it called lime green. Some kind of more brighter green version. Which, like I said, someone drove by and could notice, like, oh, that's Cheri, and it just seemed like, oh, and you just okay, it's time. Kind of one angle I've been looking into is Cheri's car had a license plate insignia thing from where I believe she bought her car where she got it serviced, which was called Econo Motors. It was the Volkswagen.
Somebody was asking about that VW repair shop earlier.
The VW, exactly. So this is an angle I'm kind of recently been looking into here, just as of kind of today, actually. Yeah. And Econo Motors would have been interesting because they would have known that was Cheri's car. Someone that worked there would have known it was Cheri's car.
Good point. Someone brought that up earlier. Could it be a connection to he would have been a mechanic. He would have been a mechanical. He would have known, obviously the distributor cap. That's a great
angle. Distributor cap thing. Boom. He would have known that it would be easy to pull. Like, that car is good because that's an easy car to disable. If it was a different car, that would have been harder to disable. So that kind of left you vulnerable there. Driving the bug. And a mechanic, someone would be working with his hands, right? So that would give more an opportunity to get some kind of paint.
The paint they found on the watch band could have been car paint. Could
have been car paint, right? So, and here's something interesting that I just kind of pulled up as of an hour.
Came up with is this, in my opinion.
I like that.
An hour ago, I was just kind of just doing some browsing, doing some looking into this Econo Motors. And it turns out, so it was owned by a guy named Joe Vittori, and his son, and he had a son named Daryl, who at the time was Cheri. I think he was like Cheri's killing. I think he was murdered. I think he was like 22 at the time. But what I find interesting is in 1963, in this article I found, Joe and his son Daryl, they flew to England to visit Speedwell's headquarters at Chesham near London, right? So these guys are also into the car racing, modifying the bugs to go like super fast. They started this kit for them and all this, right? So they're in all of that, motor speedway and all that kind of stuff. But they went to England in '63. And then I looked.
We know what year the watch was, because they said that Timex was from England or manufactured there, but I wonder if they ever.
I was going to ask you. That was going to be my next question, actually, to Ross or you.
Yeah, I don't know if they have an exact year. I think they had
exact manufacturing date.
Yeah, manufacturing.
Right. But even more interesting is, so I looked up where Chesham was, right, and to see, because it was sold at military PXs, right. So I looked how close a military PX was to Chesham.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's RAF Halton Royal Air Force Base, and that's 17 minutes, 10 miles away from where they were there at the Speedway headquarters at Chesham.
Wow.
So they were there in '63, right next, in the UK, in London, right next to a PDX. So that's where I'm just like, I'm still kind of looking into it, but I'm just like, there's someone that went to UK, that went to England, was right there by a PDX space, and they're back here in Riverside.
So you're right. Again, we're looking for a smaller guy. That is his watch. She scraped it off during that struggle, and that's his watch. We know his wrist size. That's huge. You know, I just never thought of it before in terms of a bigger guy or Allen or Sullivan, because there's no way those guys are going to wear a watch. That is probably a wrist the size of mine. I got a small wrist.
And here's
a smaller guy.
Yeah. And here's the other thing about working there at Econo Motors. You would have access to any car there on the lot if you wanted to take it. So like a Studebaker. So I saw one comment on Econo Motors. Someone was saying that used to be a Studebaker lot, or something to the effect that Studebakers were sold there. I'm still doing some more work.
The Studebakers were already getting old by 66, weren't they? Or were they?
See, I think it's a Studebaker, Nicky, and that I don't think it's a torpedo. And also, Sullivan supposedly drove a motorcycle at the time, so why is he firing up the Studebaker? You know what I mean? I there's no
right,
mention of a motorcycle.
A Studebaker doesn't strike me like, I'm looking at it, doesn't strike me like as someone in the mid 60s as that's like a car they wanted, like a college kid. Yeah, Studebaker wasn't cool. Yeah. It's like an old man's dad car, right?
Yeah.
So this is just my theory, right? If someone was working in Econo, they're not going to go prowling or whatever with their own car. So they could take one of the cars, go joyriding, and they'll probably just take a car that, not associated with them, some car that they never drove before. Like if he's taking the nicest, sportiest cars around, he's not going to pick one of those probably if he's already, been joyriding in one of those. So it was some car, no one was able to recognize or spot, which was, kind of unusual because, like I said, they did that reenactment. Everyone came back with their same cars and, everything like that. It just seems out of place.
There was some planning, obviously, because there was some planning involved because he took the distributor caps off. But we know that at some point when BB comes back to Riverside, he lives out of the country. He still lives out of the country. He's still alive. We know that. But he comes back, and I don't remember what year this was. I don't know if it's the 80s or no, it must have been in the 90s because DNA was already kind of being a thing.
92,
and and supposedly BB said they met, the police knew he was flying into Riverside to visit family or whatever. And he supposedly made the comment, "What took you guys so long?" You never know if that shit's true or not.
Yeah.
But they got his DNA. He gave a sample willingly. The DNA obviously wasn't a match to what they have on Cheri. But did the DNA sample that they tested BB against, was that from the hair or what was under her nails? I assume it was from the hair. I don't even know.
I don't think the nails was testable. It was degraded to only identify a white Caucasian male. And what I heard they took from him was hair, and blood, saliva. I think he gave him a full profile. So the fact that
that's what the DNA specialist said. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what BB gave, or what did they test BB against though? Was it the hair?
I don't know what they tested him against. Yeah, I don't know that. But that's
and it's not a full profile that the police have. It's just
right.
It was enough to either rule him. Maybe it was enough to rule him out. It was enough to rule BB out. So they know BB was negative to what they have.
And we don't know if that's just like mostly a Bud Kelly thing, like.
Oh, could it be back to Bud Kelly? He could have done. He could have arranged anything.
Just as far as like pushing the BB narrative, I mean, so it's like because you think, this other thing, the other story going along with like the B word is going to the library on the Magical 60s cell phone is the one that after that BB comes into the green turtle. And he's crying at the 24-hour diner breakfast. It said like, "I just snuffed Cheri." Like it's the most theatrical version of the story you could ever hear.
What's the origin of that?
It might be those guys that gave the statement that gave the polygraph that were trying to get out of their drug charges. And I don't know how legit they are, but then he asks a friend, like, just listen to this for a second. Tell me if even a person who did a crime in their first night, a total amateur college student, wouldn't do this, goes back to the place, announces it in front of everybody, and then asks one of his friends for a ride to go get something. Then they go back to the dark lot and they're with the flashlight looking for the watch. But it's not even that big of a space, so why can't they find the watch if that's the only thing if that's the only thing that fell? Why can't they find it with a flashlight? It's not even that big of a space unless there was something else. Unless there was something else that they got and they forgot the watch. But like that's the BB narrative. It's you can see Zodiac Files episode 3, but it's a weird story. Like
that doesn't check out. Who the hell goes back to a scene of a crime? It just strikes me as DuckTales.
Hours later after announcing it,
even to get a watch because it wasn't that uncommon. Like, oh man, it was engraved on the back and said for your birthday,
if it had
your birthday on it
or your name, right?
Yeah, your initials on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
if this,
you
if
wouldn't
this
risk going
actually
back over a
happened,
watch.
Yeah.
yeah, and if this actually happened in the diner and there's people around,
Yeah.
it would have became a, it would have become a, it would become a story. It'd be Riverside lore, and
Urban
on the
legend.
group I didn't see, urban legend on the group I didn't see nobody talking about this incident or anything like that. If it did happen, there seems like there would have been someone there that would have remembered it. They would be talking about that story on the group. So
It
none of
sounds
the
like-
locals
yeah.
has the story. So they're all coming from a selective. We don't know who. Like I said, these guys are trying to get up
And
drug
repeat
charges. So it all just
over and
seems
over.
like fabricated to me.
It sounds like
Yeah.
those guys made it up. Like, hey, can you get rid of my charge too? And then I was at the diner and he came in and confessed. It sounds so movie
Yeah,
theatrical.
it's
you know?
scripted. It's like it's too good to be true.
Yeah, it sounds like a Murder She Wrote episode and much more or less like something that
Yeah.
happened. But that's
And
what
I'm sure
we're dealing
BB
with.
wasn't. BB wasn't a good guy. Let's face it. He was known. He had a pretty good record for auto theft, stealing cars, car parts, things like that. He was not a murderer by any means, but he was kind of a rough guy. He worked that night. He checked into work at midnight the night she was murdered, and that kind of checked out. And he got fired a year later, but he stayed on for a full
Nobody
year.
saw nobody at work remembered BB coming in with scratches or anything like that.
No,
Yeah.
no, and BB might have just not liked the cops. I mean, for whatever reason.
That's why Ross Sullivan was apparently cleared. He had an alibi and he didn't have any scratches, even though he supposedly changed his clothes and didn't come to class for a
That's
week.
a great
and then came
point.
back dressed differently. But the cops passed over him because he said they verified where he was apparently, and he didn't have any things. There was a weird story about him skinning sheep for some girl and having some odd behavior, but that's about as far as it went for him. I mean, they cleared him, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, because this guy would have had wounds. This guy would have had scratches, no doubt, because she put up a hell of a fight. There's just no way. So you think Bud Kelly alone could have convinced the whole Riverside PD that it's BB? Because to this day they seem like they're just still dead set on BB being her killer. Could that have all been orchestrated by Kelly?
It's possible. I mean, Susanna said they worked on it. So they test something during the History Channel show, and then I think she said she worked on it like a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years after she did the interview with Morph, and I'm not sure when that was when she tested the Davis stuff. So she said that RPD, this was her direct quote, RPD cares and they're working on it. And at the time, wasn't as familiar with her work, so I was like, how does she know they're working on it? But obviously they had her test, a couple things or multiple things. But man, if that's been 4 or 5 years ago, I don't understand what's going on. It's time to call Othram, Feels like Donna Lasso.
Oh God, way past time.
Cooper,
It could because it was like the Carla Walker case. The Carla Walker case that Othram broke wide open and kind of put them on a map years ago. They had just a sliver of DNA left in that case to find this guy because every time you tested it degrades. So Paul Holes, David Middleman of Othram called Paul Holes and said, "Hey, I don't know you know me, but please give me that last little bit of DNA you have left in the Carla Walker case, and I promise you, I'm gonna nail this guy." And he did with the hardly just because if you tested it and failed, there was no more tries. It'd be degraded to where you can't test it ever again. And nailed this dirtbag that was still alive for killing this cheerleader back in 1980. So whatever they got, get it to him. And try to get a full profile from, I'm assuming, the hair.
Yeah. So I have an exact Riverside activity parallel for what Drew was just saying. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Nicky, Susanna said of the 3 hairs, they already tested 2. So there's only 1 left. So now Cheri's in
No. They tested 1. I think they tested 1. They got 3 left.
Okay. I thought she was saying
hairs
there was 3.
or 3 tries.
Of the
no, they got 3 hair. They got 3 hairs left. They tested 1, so I'm assuming it's like a one-shot deal. Once you do it once, that's I think that's it. So that one's done.
Yeah, I thought she said out of the 3 they only had.
I never
1
heard
left,
that.
Drew.
I always
And then
thought they
was
only had
gonna
1
say,
hair.
There's only 1 piece left, and then they have to. Then we got to call that guy again because he's the only one that's going to get this thing.
He's only one person in the world I would trust that with.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the thing about the hair is that was probably kept in a better environment as far as preserving DNA. The problem with all the pants and the other stuff is I think we said we were going to kind of touch on it. Yeah. The problem was Riverside PD, where they keep their evidence back then. We're talking about very hot temperatures in the summer in the Inland Empire.
It's like a
So,
locker, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they, there wasn't temperature controlled or anything like that. There was no AC in there. So it was sitting
Yeah.
for years and, through hot,
Well,
hot,
Yeah.
LA,
California heat.
SoCal summers, man.
Yeah.
I know how those can be. I mean, we have some days where it gets up to like 115 a few times in the Inland Empire,
Yep.
So it's, exposed to those kind of heat. I see why it's so, it's so degraded now. But with Othram, I still, don't think that'll be a problem for them. That's who definitely you need to go to. But the hair, probably can be, you might not need Othram, obviously the best, but if you're doing, like, let's say they're just doing it with their own lab or something, you probably don't, since that evidence is a little bit better, probably kept in condition. Well, the hair is probably a little easier to work with if you're not Othram,
Yeah, well, then Susanna's lab should have already tested.
Yeah, that's what they specialize in.
Number two after Othram, they do hot cases. They have her testifying weekly in cases, and they're nailing. I mean, they got a lot of hot cases, so I don't think the 60s are probably very high up on the radar. But according to her, and then I would love to hear what happened with that Davis stuff, Drew. So that's why we got to talk to her, because I got some questions for her on that.
Interesting comment
killers
there.
Only go back to watch. Yeah, killers only go back to watch homicide detectives in a crowd or to visit a remote body, but not right after to clean up a site right out in public. No, he's right.
Serial killers, but what about a completely amateur who was just expecting to throw Cheri in the back seat and drive away with her, and then got more than he bargained for? And that's where we come back to the confession letter. She went to the slaughter like a lamb, blah 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 blah, and obviously you wouldn't have lost your watch and completely left evidence there if you got what you wanted. That's why it doesn't seem like the writer is the killer, Nicky, because of those discrepancies. You know what I mean? And then the True Detective stuff. So
yeah, they're Dion.
Right? Yeah, but
could have made the phone call though.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate, maybe he was, he didn't like how things went down, right? So maybe he was trying to change the narrative to how he wanted it, how he wanted people to view it, right? Which was an easy killing, went off without a hitch. That's kind of how he's projecting it in the confession letter. So it makes sense if things went haywire, that he wouldn't want to admit to that, obviously. So he's kind of has this kind of, you kind of have to be
that's
kind of kind of cocky a little bit to do this. Yeah,
he's taking the Jack the Ripper braggadocious tone. Drew, do you have this stuff? A shout out to Dion. He's got the facts.
Yeah. Dion has always done a lot of great stuff on Bates.
Yeah, I seen Dion on the Cheri Joe Bates Facebook group. Yeah, I'm on there. I see Dion on. I've been going through, and I've seen a lot of good stuff from Dion.
Yeah, he's done a lot. He's done a lot of great work on Bates.
And Nick, shout out to Nick Dottenberger, I believe, as well. Those two on there have been doing a good job, kind of running the page.
Oh yeah, I've seen his stuff too. Like really, really great work. But yeah, I think I agree with Barnett's just one of those guys. BB. It's obviously it's a pseudonym, but I don't know why they're so convinced, but there's some stuff there. But you're right, it just doesn't add up with him. The DNA is not ironclad. It could have been from one of his buddies. That's why he tested negative. But the watch is pretty damning. I mean, watch could not have fit a bigger guy, and we know he's a bigger guy, just like Sullivan. I don't think they could have worn a watch that small, and I don't think the police would have gotten there and readjusted the strap to me.
No. I think
that was the attacker's watch because she pulled it off of him.
Well, with that, as you guys were saying, as Nicky was saying, with that kind of form-fitting leather, once it gets stuck in that position, and then if a working man, a mechanic, or a military man, with the sweat into it, that kind of hardens the texture. It kind of freezes it in that position it was found, found in, as you guys are saying.
That's a good point, because it looks like it's like kind of, the band doesn't look like loose, flexible to me. It looks like
gets
stiff.
Molded, especially an old watch.
It
only hardens with the sweat
That's
absorption.
a good point. That's a good point, Ross. That's what I'm saying. If some guy that was working with his hands, obviously why he got the paint spatter on there, and obviously why it's how Ross just described. Made a great point that how stiff it was. It's probably just because all of the sweat and just kind of staying in there. That's where I'm leaning towards.
Oh, geez.
at
Drew,
the
do you
time.
have the
MJ was at
pictures?
USC. He's your driver.
Yeah, we don't need him.
I'm not going
around.
there.
Drew, do you
It was
have
a
the
white male we're looking for. We're pretty sure.
yeah, exactly. For this one, yeah. Do you have the pictures of the what is that, a railroad building, or was it a restaurant, Nicky, with the Mikado stuff? And do you have those ones, Drew?
I had.
Yeah, so if you want to go down this
I
Mikado
got
rabbit
the.
hole,
Yeah, I've got the
Nicky
Mikado.
can talk this too.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead with Nicky with the start with the Mikado because that was Riverside Junior High.
Yeah,
I don't know what year, but I've got the picture up.
yeah. So I was on the on that Riverside group. I was on that Riverside group, and I'm just like, I just started typing in some keywords just to see if I get any hits. I was like, oh, let me type in Mikado, and just to see, maybe one of the schools had a play going on, right? But I didn't, I was just like, whatever. I just typed it in just out of curiosity, and then boom, I see a comment from one of the band students at Central Junior High, who said it that year, 1966, we did a Mikado, and the school is right across the street from RCC. He also said that high school students from, I believe, from Ramona or I don't know if there was another high school,
Ramona
Central
High
High, Ramona.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's. I don't. Yep.
She went to Ramona.
They participated.
Cheri Joe went to Ramona.
Cheri went to Ramona. Yeah, so they were also played a part in the Mikado play. So I thought that was just kind of interesting that it was that exact year. Like, it could be Mikado could have been going on any year, but it just happened that year.
Yep.
That's when they were doing the play, which I was just like, well,
yeah, I didn't know they had done it that close
That's
to the
crazy.
crime. So yeah, that's interesting. Could have picked it up.
Right, and there's been talks, I guess, of Zodiac having like connections to interest or connections to railroading, to railways, and then I found that thing about the Mikado engine. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay, and then I saw that the last train or whatever for whatever railway or whatever, the last one that went into Riverside, they did a special run, and it was this Mikado one. That did its last trip from, I believe, from LA Union Station there to Riverside. I was like,
Yeah, it was a Mikado
right,
engine, and they named it after a guy. His name was Mikado, but it wasn't spelled the way that the Gilbert and Sullivan play was. But they did name those engines, writing it the same way as Gilbert and Sullivan, with the same spelling. And then I think it was also the wheel arrangement of the engine is called the double Mikado. And I think it was the way the engine wheels were set up. But yeah, I never heard that. I never heard that about the engine. Of course, what was it? The Southern Pacific logo is kind of similar to Zodiac. And I think
right,
Ned
and then so they had a
talk about that for a while. A guy was really into the whole train connection with Zodiac, and the hobos or whatever would leave the different symbols that meant different things at each train stop. So the hobos would know like if they were friendly or whatever the signs were, and they look kind of similar to the cipher symbols.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and then so you had that on the train. There was a train car restaurant there. I forgot what year, but it was already there prior to Cheri's murder. And then the train car restaurant had the cross, the circle with the cross through it on there, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, you got to send that one to Drew.
So yeah, there's some Mikados.
Nicky, that was crazy. And then again, all of that stuff looks kind of similar to the Alfred Bud Lord thing, which kind of
that was interesting.
Circle with a cross on it from like 38. So there might be some older references here that go back pretty far.
Right, and then we have I believe in Cheri's high school yearbook, her graduating year. I think this was 64. In the yearbook, you see a picture of a classroom with desks, and there's a chalkboard with like different scribbles on it, right? And you got the Zodiac symbol right on there.
Yeah, another cross circle
on the blackboard. Yeah,
another cross circle. You also got at Pacific High School, I believe in San Bernardino, in '64. You got a guy by the name of Big Bad Zode running around the halls.
Nicky gave me an education on Big Bad Zode. Yep. Big Bad. What school did Big Bad Zode go to?
He went to hold on. I think I just said it. Pacific High School in San Bernardino, they actually had one of the biggest graduating, one of the biggest student bases in all of SoCal. Their graduating class was like huge, bigger than pretty much any other school for whatever reason. So, there's some interesting kind of connections to Zodiac already starting in SoCal. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
like
guy
he had a lot
already having them.
that guy called himself Zodiac or whatever before,
going
way
around.
before Lake Herman Road. Way before Lake.
Right.
Herman.
What I found the most interesting is I read a comment on, because I joined the Pacific High School alumni Facebook group, and there was a comment on there. This was before that last cipher was cracked, and it had the slaves in the afterlife in it. I read this before that. A student commented and was saying that one of the things he did was he went around the halls telling students that you're going to be my slave in the afterlife.
Yeah.
So this was before that. That was before the cipher was cracked.
Yeah,
so in '64.
Yeah, that was way before. Way before.
Card, so
yeah.
So you got a guy in '64 in Southern California adopting the moniker Zodiac.
Ever said that. Yeah, that was
going
that is
around.
Circumstantially.
But one thing, Nick, the Zodiac quote is "slaves in paradise." So is it?
He said afterlife too. He said both.
Yeah. So
he said both.
Yeah. No. And then of course, like if you go with the train stuff, like Ray Davis is right next to the train tracks. The train tracks even run by.
I didn't know that.
Beach. Yeah.
About Ray Davis.
Where he's at, the train.
Oceanside. Yeah, Oceanside.
Right,
the tracks run right through Oceanside.
Yeah.
I've stayed in Oceanside before. If you could sometimes, if you're like right by the tracks run right by the beach actually, and you can hear the tracks. Like if you're staying, like I think I got Airbnb like maybe 3 or 4 years ago down there by the beach, and you could hear, it was by the tracks, and you can hear the trains come in there. So you have that connection to kind of railroads, and then also like military bases. Like Riverside was a big military, obviously Oceanside.
Camp
Pendleton. Yeah.
And then the tracks running by Gaviota 63 as well. What would you call that? Santa Barbara. I don't know if it's the same track, Nicky. I'll have to look that up, because if it is, that could be a little bit closer to the.
Yeah, I think it's the same line, dude. I think it's the same line. Runs through Riverside.
So then
runs through Riverside, runs through the IE, and then goes up to San Diego area.
Yeah. In which case, and then we know like the Gaviota suspects, like George Gill, who made the infamous Gill Shack, and so he was actually a hobo that was for sure hopping those trains. So you do have, me and Nicky were talking about the hobos and the train bumming the train rides. So
and Riverside had a
symbols
hobo
that the
camp.
hobos would do. They had their own language of symbols.
Yeah. No, they had their whole.
At each train stop.
Like Drew said, it's almost like a Masonic symbolism,
cipher
where
symbols.
They have their own language. With
they had their own writing.
Yep.
And there was a camp there in Riverside. I was reading a post by some kid he was a kid there in the 50s, and he was recounting on him hanging out with the hobos, and they were like they showed him how to cook. Like he was like, I think they just wanted me to like. They just were like using me so that I can bring them food, but they were like, this is how you cook. This is how you cook the hobo way. They were like teaching them how to cook the hobo way, how you cut the can, with the knife. Also, hobos probably always got knives on them. But he was recounting hanging out at the hobos and hanging out with them, and them teaching them how to teach them cook the hobo way and all this stuff. So, and that ought to be a good cover. Culture. I mean, if you're riding the rails, you can just go back into a hobo camp, and no one's gonna,
disappear for a while.
No one's gonna have eyes on you. Yeah,
you could hide. You could hide amongst them.
Yep, absolutely.
Exactly. So the only thing is, like, if he's Zodiac, or if he was Cheri's killer and Cheri actually wrote the confession, it's like, well, how does this guy have access to a typewriter and stuff like that?
Good point.
That's kind of the only thing.
Confession letter was definitely typed.
Back then, though, you could probably. What more would you need than a library card? You could walk into a public library and probably use a copier. I mean, it's not that far of a stretch if you got a little bit of resources. I mean, there does seem to be some sort of transportation theme in the Zodiac, because you obviously have the car connection, which is obvious. Possibly the trains, and then the dripping pen card is either like a submarine, Drew, or a plane. So like a Drew's theory, like Air Force. So he does seem to be making some metaphorical symbolism between cars, trains, and or naval vessels or planes. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
I agree. Yeah, and then we have that restaurant Riverside with the cross thing, but then there was actually another restaurant in North Hollywood, my stomping grounds. It's where I'm at, actually currently over here at my sister's.
Nice.
But
So,
there is this restaurant Mikado. Ran basically the back of it is right on the 101 freeway, which is the 101 is what you take to go from SoCal to Northern California. And this place was called the Mikado, and I don't know what year the building had this, but as of kind of I don't know exactly when it got that, but it has the crosshair symbol. So we have two restaurants that
Try to find a picture
that
of that.
had the. Yeah, I'll send it. I'll send it to you if
you
I
have
haven't.
one?
But it's got the crosshair. Yeah, I got it. I just don't know when that. Because it seemed like the place either got a facelift or it got completely reconstructed.
Remodeled,
I don't know
yeah.
because I can't see it in the 60s photos. I can't see the crosshair thing. But in the later pictures I've seen, it has that on the building. So just kind of another interesting thing.
Let me
real
read
quick,
this
boys.
comment.
If you type it,
Oh, go
you
ahead.
know.
Let me read this real quick because y'all saw this comment. It was on one of my uploads, but you guys saw it at the same time I did. It said, I still think Cheri Jo Bates' killer was Stephanie Gutman's uncle, Robert E. Hunter, construction welder who worked across from Riverside Community College. It was someone who knew she was at the library, which her own father did not know, but Stephanie Gutman knew because she turned down Cheri Jo's offer to accompany her to the library. This girl's uncle was Robert Hunter. It says Bates was not a Zodiac victim. I mean, you never know when someone leaves something like that on a YouTube page, what
Very
they know or not.
specific.
But I think there's a Robert Hunter that gets mentioned in the Bay Area, but it's not the same as this person.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
looked him up.
I went down that rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, there was one.
So nothing there?
Military veteran that we found the grave.
Yeah,
and then
Vietnam vet.
Yeah, the other one, he was Army, and then the other dude I think was passed away, or I don't know. But that is for one. That theory assumes that the daughter would have to tell him, right? Because otherwise
Right.
he would have to listen into the phone.
Yeah,
call.
why would she tell him?
So how else?
Hey,
Unless he's there-
Uncle,
unless he's there at the
Cheri will
house.
be at the library at,
Yeah.
at
Oh, like
6
heard the
p.m.
conversation. You mean? Like,
Unless he's there at the house, but then it just seems kind of far fetched. Like, he was there visiting and just heard her talking,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
that she's gonna be at the library, and
or
then
what they said
Coincidental.
unless you listened in on one of the phones. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
conjecture there. Going back
Yeah.
to the big bad Zode thing, Drew. Did you hear this story about how that dude was like a massive fanboy of Melvin Belli? So Melvin Belli.
I don't remember that. I mean,
I know
Nicky's the
Nicky knows
first
the
person
story.
that told me about him
I know
months
Nicky
ago.
knows
yeah.
the
So
story.
remember
Melvin
the Belli
Belli actually asked him straight up, "Are you Zodiac?" So
What?
there was actually in Riverside, Belli had some kind of speaking arrangement. I think for UC Riverside, or he was doing something where he was speaking. I don't know if it was to the students, or I think it was something like the students or something. It was some educational thing.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
I guess
panel.
Belli had heard the story about Zachlett from Graysmith or whatever. He heard it, right? And I guess he was alerted that Zachlett was going to be there. And he straight up asked him, he's like, "Oh, are you the Zodiac?"
It was in a room full of cops, Drew. So I guess they put him up to it
Yeah.
as a sting. There was a bunch of law enforcement there. They're
Wow,
like,
so he got looked at that
so
much.
They're gonna have
he
Belli
just didn't get blown off.
to see what his reaction was. And he supposedly had like a super awkward reaction, like, "No, I'm just like a massive fan of yours, like blah blah blah. You're a hero of mine." And so it ended up being a much more awkward event than the kid thought that it was going to be. You know?
That's interesting. but Big Bad Zode was in high school in '65, wasn't he? Or he was younger.
Yeah, yeah, he was in high school, and
64,
I think
65.
Zachlett was still in high school in '65.
I think it was years
Yeah, so
later.
he
It was
would've
years
been pretty
later.
young,
Maybe,
but he's-
maybe when he was in college, right?
Yeah, and another he was there at Pacific when Patricia Hotz was there. Who Patricia wrote that
the letter.
that kind of that weird letter. So
God.
they were classmates, I believe, in '64. I believe Patricia graduated, I think, in '64. So they were classmates there at Pacific. And another thing at Pacific, that year Zode was adopted the moniker, was being all weird. There was actually a girls, I believe it was a girls club that called the Zodiacs. So there was a Zodiac club in '64 also at Pacific. So you also got that. Throw it into the
I think
Zictricity or what have you.
with Big Bad Zode, though, there was never any indication that he had ever gone up to Northern California. I think that was never.
Yeah,
there was no tie
No,
to that.
I don't.
If there was, he would have
I-
really jumped up a lot more. If there was, I think that's
But
the
it
biggest
could have
thing
been-
against him was there was no ties of him. Like we know Ross Sullivan went up to Santa Cruz, which isn't Vallejo, but
that's as far as he got. Yeah.
yeah, but there was no.
My
Big Bad Zode, there
curiosity,
was never anything of him going up there. But maybe he knew somebody else or someone stole from him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, my curiosity with Zode is more that either he inspired Zode to adopt this moniker, or he saw Zode operating, and he was influenced by Zode. And those are good too. I don't think Zode had really anything to do with it. Although maybe he was a mentor, like they knew each other, and that he inspired him to use that, or the other way around, or something. I just find it awful curious that there's someone already in Southern California in '64, giving a line that's exactly in the Zodiac cipher, and it's all doing the same moniker. So
yeah,
it
he's
could
working
be an enemy of Zode, someone who didn't like him. They just would have had to been conscious of him using that moniker and going around saying that phrase, and then it could be another.
It took it up to Northern California.
Zodiac framing him, because if Zodiac seemingly framed Chester Clark Klingel, seemingly somewhat somehow similarly framed Arthur Lee Allen, he could be framing Big Zode. He could be going around making all these insinuations that all these people are the real Zodiac, but he's taking little bits and pieces from them all.
That's something he would do.
Point back to everybody else but him. Zode was going around saying it. Arthur Lee Allen
stealing from everybody.
The writing and the letters, and then Drew brought up Fred Manali earlier on my show.
Oh, I can't shake Manali.
I don't know how
I can't
he would
shake
put
Fred Manali.
all the pieces together, but if he did take all those things, and it's just a theory,
Yeah, I agree with Steven. It says a guy has ties to Riverside. He's right in front of our face. He's right. Don't underestimate younger, weaker looking guys. Yeah, he's right. David Berkowitz. Definitely Berkowitz would come across as, you think Ross, no one would have ever thought Berkowitz at the time, other than being just kind of weird, would be capable of shooting people point blank.
Manny is absolutely the best on Berkowitz, and he says on his channel, I think he wrote the letter, and he was like, to one of his maybe friends, or I'm not sure who he was writing to, but he's like, I have a baby face, and I like having it because no one suspects me of anything. I mean, the guy is totally unempathetic, just man,
just
he enjoyed
a bum.
it.
What do they come up? Like, what was the Yiddish term they would call him, a schlep or something? Or
exactly.
The Yiddish term for Berkowitz is just a schlep.
He thought he would get away with it, and he had the blend-in face, so no one would look at him. So he was apparently happy about it and bragging in letters. It's like, oh man, just the total lack of empathy. It's crazy. So that's the type of individual.
But I also agree. I could totally see Cheri's killer, being a Riverside local that just kind of hit in plain sight.
Mechanic makes a lot of sense. I mean, the mechanic. A good place to start. A mechanic, paint, smaller guy. He's right. It's somebody that's right there.
One other point I wanted to make is, this wasn't Cheri's normal routine. She didn't, because she was afraid of the dark. She didn't go to the library, at late afternoon, nighttime. That just wasn't what she did. This was out of her norm routine. Mm-hmm. So either there was just someone, she was just wrong place, wrong time, and someone was just, sitting there casing, looking for a victim, and Cheri rolled up, or it was someone that that noticed Cheri's car, knew who she was, close to RCC around that time, and then boom, and took the opportunity. I think it's one of those two scenarios.
Yeah.
And for that, a mechanic, someone that worked at Condo Motors that knew her car and knew that, that would totally fit.
Yeah, kind of knew who she was and saw an opportunity. And then, like you said, probably planned a sexual assault, and she fought like the Dickens.
The greasy fingerprints all over the hood.
Talk about that, because I know Maines talks about the greasy.
I don't get why they looks like do something
latex
with that.
was on it or something. The greasy fingerprints found on her car.
Yeah, it's all over the hood, and we haven't even talked about the state of her car, which is like door open, windows down, books on the seat. which is just a peculiar way for the car to be sitting. But I don't get why they can't get good prints off of the greasy fingerprints. I guess maybe because of the grease, or I don't know that much about.
But didn't they say? Didn't Maine say there was something like adhesive in some of those fingerprints, like something
maybe,
you'd cover your fingertips with, like some kind of I can't remember, something like adhesive too. With the
they were like smudged. They were smudged. They were like smudged prints. Yeah. Some of them were smudged.
So Zodiac with saying he uses cement,
airplane cement.
Yeah. So I don't know if that
the height is fingerprints
carries over. So, but like, would he be doing that back in '66? So that's the
here's
here's
what I find interesting is I believe they were they were able to match at least one of the prints back to Cheri's brother, Michael Bates.
Oh wow!
Is
he still alive?
So that's where I'm just.
I mean, I assume he is.
I think Mike's still alive.
I believe he is.
Yes, Mike's still alive. What's interesting is I believe he was on he was in the military, so he was on assignment. And he hadn't been home in like 2 months. So her brother's prints were on the car from 2 months prior. And everyone's talked about, Cheri kept her car really tidy. They thought that for sure she would have any smudgy prints she would have cleaned up, right? Or anything like that would have been cleaned up after she had her car serviced. And whoever's prints those have to be the assailants. Well, the fact that they found Michael Bates' prints on there, it kind of makes me think, well, maybe that's a little overblown. Maybe she wasn't quite an OCD neat freak as kind of portrayed. Just because of that. But what's interesting, if it was someone that worked at Econo Motors, well, he wouldn't be worried about leaving prints there because he would have an alibi for it. Well, yeah, I worked on Cheri's car last week. Of course, my prints are there, right? So if it was somebody else, you think they would have?
I worked on her car.
They would have wiped their prints, or they would have, like you said, like Zodiac did, or I think you've done. That's right. So the fact that there was obvious prints there, like you could see them with the naked eye. The smudging and stuff. Seems like that would have been something he would have wiped down, maybe. But then again, he abducted her. Last thing he's going to go is go back to his car and start wiping down prints. So I don't know how much time he would have had to do that anyway. Yeah. But I just kind of find it interesting. So I don't necessarily buy that those prints had to be the assailant, just for the fact that Michael Bates' prints were found on the car. So.
But it's just the fact that the hood is open with the cables pulled out, and she didn't seem to have did it herself. So unless there was multiple people, looking at it, which we don't know, did she have more than one guy come up and, hey, do you have any idea what's wrong with this?
Like the prints match where the prints were kind of matches up where like putting your hand on top of the car up there,
and then touching the hood,
leaning over.
Going back to the confession letter when he says I pulled it out and went back inside the library and waited until it, depowered. Makes absolutely no sense because it was a super small, cramped library. So if there was a greasy mechanic standing there, unless they somehow
stick out like a sore thumb.
Unless they somehow found some way to stick themselves in the corner and just stare at the wall so no one looked at their face. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense that you would pull out the wires, then go into where she is, and then why would you wait for her to follow her out? Because you could obviously just wait for her outside until she comes back to her car and tries to start it. So that's another part of the confession letter that's just pure fantasy. Yeah.
But here's the thing: the devil's in the details, and you just said wires. But what the confession letter says is, I pulled out one. He says he pulled out one singular wire. He didn't say I pulled out multiple wires, right? Yeah. So he was actually right about that. It's one single wire I believe on the distributor. So if he didn't know his stuff, he could have just said, I pulled out wires.
Which True Detective magazine said first, Nicky. I believe it said the distributor coil or distributor wire. So it could be just a carbon copy of what was.
But that was already known, though. By the time that letter came out, it was already known.
Yeah.
How it was done.
Yeah, no, that info was already known. It doesn't mean he didn't know cars exactly, because he could have extrapolated more on that and been wrong. He kind of went. I don't know if the carbon copy was he was just carbon copying, or there's more to it. But I did kind of find it interesting that he didn't say something that didn't make sense mechanically.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh,
pulled
agree.
out multiple wires. You know,
I mean, we think Zodiac was mechanically sound, Drew. That's, I don't know what you have on Sheeny, but of course, like, he later on, you know, draws the bus bomb diagram, so things of that nature have some sort of, you know, propensity for, you know, whatever kind of components. If you like the car angle, Nicky, you should check out Rodelli's stuff. Not that I'm saying that you'll agree with KQ, but the way that he lines up, you know, the Volkswagens, the Carmen Gias, even the William Crow incident, he does an amazing job with the car angle, better than probably anyone I've seen, as far as just the brands and, you know, what could be the meaning behind Zodiac having this affinity for these types of cars and you know, models and makes.
Allen had two. Arthur Lee Allen had two Carmen Gias. And an Austin Healey. Allen was a car guy. I mean, he had an Austin Healey, two Carmen Gias.
My
a car guy too.
Is the freaking Allen's grandfather being Norwegian, so like the SLA thing.
Oh yeah, he was.
Allen,
yeah.
all the Norway stuff fits them both, so I don't really do much with
yeah,
it. You know, got both of them at Riverside,
Norwegian
both of them
ancestry.
at the race. Both of them at the race. It's just like,
yeah, there's a lot of ties there with Allen.
Brutal.
And then I think Allen, Peter Ackerman did some stuff on this, and he's a big Allen and Zodiac guy. I never met him, but he has some interesting stuff of how Allen gets into letters. But I think Allen had a car called a Kaiser. It's very similar to a Studebaker. Very similar lights in the back. I think he had I think it was called a Kaiser, if I'm not remembering that wrong. But he kind of makes a good tie into that. But you know, Allen too big for the watch, number one. Just like Sullivan, way too big. Cheney too big for that watch.
One thing I was going to show you, Drew, I'll have to send you this picture because my background's blurred. I don't think it will come across. Rodelli has this Zodiac model Ford, and it essentially has like almost a square crosshair.
Yeah, the logo's similar, but not real
that?
similar in my opinion.
But
Ford had a Zodiac.
It has the cross, but
the symbol's a bit of a stretch, though, in my opinion.
It's not circular, but it has the cross.
But it was called Zodiac.
Yeah, and it has the word Zodiac with it, so it's another cross.
Yeah.
It was called a Zodiac.
With the word Zodiac. It's not perfect, but I liked it. It was the first time I had seen it. I was like, okay, that could be something, you know. And he had a little more with this show, I guess a British show called Z Cars, which was for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that with Rodelli did some good stuff. I mean, I think that people's main knock on Cavalli is one, he was this impeccably dressed, wealthy businessman. And of course, Brian Hartnell, is described his attacker at Berryessa as a slob.
Shabby,
He seemed very blue collar to me. Not unintelligent, but just like a very blue collar appearance. And of course, Cavalli was thin. Zodiac was described as a stocky guy. So I think that's people's first thing. A hard stretch with Cavalli's is this wealthy, impeccably dressed, thinner, very fit guy.
Was he like a skier? Wasn't he like a skier? Like wasn't he like a skier as well? Wasn't he a skier?
He was very. I think he skied.
Yeah. He's an athlete.
So you got to be in to ski. You got to be in good shape. I'll tell you right now.
He
looked fit.
He was like a speed track runner. He and that was probably
very
early
athletic.
years, but skier, speedboats, horse racer. I don't know if he did polo. I mean, I don't like him for Berryessa, Drew, but that one picture he has of him with the horse. I hate to even say this on Drew's show, but his face is a dead ringer for the comp sketch for Presidio Heights. He does look just like him. I'm not saying it means anything. It's just probably synchronicity, but he has one photo of him.
How old was Cavalli in 69? I don't even know.
Older. He was like, he's 50s, 50s.
Yeah, he would have been an older suspect.
He's like the oldest suspect, I think. But this one picture he has, it's like, it looks a lot like that comp sketch. I mean, we all have varying feelings on the comp sketch, whatever. But, it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't peg Cheri's killer as being too athletic. So that's what Cavalli is out for me. Even though he's older age, I don't think he would have had too much of a problem with Cheri.
I don't think take the risk. You're an importer that has multi-millions. You're racing your cars at the race. Why do you leave the race and go do that on Halloween or whatever night?
I never knew that Rodelli tried to make a play for Riverside with the suspect. Like Cheney, I never did.
Some stuff.
I never, with Cheney, I was like, I never like, I don't need it or not. I was like, that's why I was 50-50 at best.
Yeah.
It being
he
a Zodiac
mentions it a
crime.
couple times. I'm going to talk to him about it. I've mixed feelings on it.
It's interesting though.
I can leave.
He's done a lot of great research. It's just
no.
a stretch because of mainly his physical appearance. He does not come close to what
Presidio Heights Rodelli's the expert on Presidio Heights. So their interview, him and Jim Dean with Donald Felk. Drew, I was going around, I'm going to talk to Mike about this, telling everybody, oh, the fog that night at Presidio Heights, you couldn't see the blood on him because of the fog. There was absolutely no fog that night. I was one of the people going around saying that. So a lot of the misnomers you can have about Paul Stein in October, you can easily get off the beaten path if you don't look at exactly what Falk said. Falk said not only did they not stop him, Zelms didn't even see him in the car. You're talking about one of the guys in the car that didn't even see him. So Falk just got that kind of profile when the lights brushed over him, and that was really it. It wasn't, people make it a lot bigger, like in a conversation.
Yeah, well, no one argues that Falk. No one really argues that Falk saw him or not. People believe that Falk absolutely saw him.
Yeah, he didn't stop him and talk to him though. But
no,
and there was
he was looking for a black guy.
So.
He was looking for a black guy. He had no reason to.
Right. But yeah, man, I hope Nicky enjoyed the tour up in Riverside. I made a point to bring him right to the quad. We spun by Cheri's house finally. I got that pic on my thing. We got the short walk and talk. So Nicky's finding great material.
No, that's
yeah,
great
I just
stuff.
want to thank you again for bringing me down there, Ross.
Absolutely,
Nicky's a digger. Nicky will get into those groups and find out all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
You know, Nicky and I tag teamed to figure out the name of Dwayne Ingram's dog, George, down at the
Dwayne Ingram's dog, George.
We tag team and found that
Speaking
little
of,
nugget.
Speaking of, today's the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, everything goes back to Tina Bar for Cooper, but that's the reason why Dwayne Ingram even supposedly knew about the Tina Bar, because that's where he would take his dog to go run up and down the beach.
Right, of Brian, right, Nicky?
That's what I was going to bring up.
Today's I thought he was.
Is it really? Wow, November. Okay, February 10th. What's the day that Brian found the money?
Nice.
Today's the day that Brian found the money. Yep.
Leave it to Drew to do
Wow. So what year?
What
year? So he found it in 1980. So
we should be doing.
Wow, that's amazing.
February 10th, 1980. Today's the fine day. Yep.
We got our
8-year-old Brian Ingram found DB Cooper's money on the Tina Bar.
We got our Cooper.
What was also tripping me out is we were a week from today. We were down in Riverside, so last Saturday, and then I believe Cheri showed Bates' birthday was last Sunday. Yep. So we had no idea. We were down there.
We were going through notes and looking at new stuff, and then he hit me like I was sending him stuff I was finding, like the Bud Lord stuff, and then he's like, I'm like, damn, so. Now, last time I was in Riverside shooting the episode, that was the anniversary. I think it was either Halloween or the anniversary. It was one of those days. And now me and Nicky are there the day before her birthday. Like, it's just the synchronicity keeps on coming, man. It's crazy.
They never stop.
Yeah,
they never stop.
We didn't plan that. We were actually supposed to do it, I think, like a couple weeks before, but then I came down with COVID.
It's been pouring in SoCal. Then Nicky got COVID, so we've been planning this for a while, Drew. We missed it, and then we ended up like almost right on her birthday, so that was crazy. You have a Yuba question from Fire Pixie, Drew, if you care to.
Yeah, no, I'm going to do another Yuba video because, Gateway, I interviewed the boys basketball coach, and no one's done that, and I was going to bring that up. So I'm able to interview the guy, the coach of the Gateway Gators, that people talked about. He's actually some people feel that he was a suspect in the Yuba County 5, but my point is, no one had talked to this guy since 1978. And I'm not bragging that I got a hold of this guy, but I just sent him a random kind of, actually, I kind of regret it. It was kind of snarky in my opinion that when I sent him, I said, hey, coach, because I found him on Facebook and I sent him a message through Messenger. I said, hey, coach, have you ever been interviewed about Yuba County 5? So I was a little snarky on my part and I regret it. But 3 weeks later, he wrote me back and said, hey, I'm willing to talk to you. Like he wasn't going to come on the show or anything, but he goes, you can call me and we'll talk about it. And so my point is like what Nicky's doing and you do and finding these people that are still around because no one had talked to this guy since 1978. And he had a lot of information about Gateway projects, who firebombed Gateway projects and the boys of Yuba County 5, but no one had talked to him in all these years. So there's people out there that know things in Zodiac, Cheri Joe Bates, Yuba, maybe Cooper, that have never been approached. They're out there. So that's just an example of that. But I'm going to do a show on that soon, and I'll reveal what this person said.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Drew's Yuba stuff, Nicky, but you like that is the missing persons case in my opinion. It's
I know.
complicated like the other ones, and
Yep.
it's wild. I never heard of it till Drew introduced me, and I was never even big on missing persons, but that one got me. I'm like hanging on him
Yeah.
and Tony's every
It's
word.
crazy. It goes along with Cooper and Zodiac. It's just California crime, 70s.
Northwestern, Northern California.
They're always on the West Coast in the 60s and 70s stuff.
Yeah, I know. Glad I wasn't around
Yeah.
there. Fire Pixie was asking you, Drew, is it true the director of the program was set on fire and there were many attempts at shutting it down? Do you think that
Yes,
those could be
the
related?
first director of Gateway was set on fire in his apartment. There was the Gateway project was firebombed, and the coach of the Gateway Gators believes he knows who did that, and I'll do a show on that. But yeah, he told me who he believes did it. He gave me the name of the guy who he firmly believes was the person that set the. It was Donald Larson was the first director of Gateway Project. And he was literally set on fire in his own apartment. Somebody opened the guy's door. I think this was 1975, and the person poured accelerant gasoline over him and threw a match on him and burned him alive in his own apartment. I mean, crazy. But the coach told me who he believes is responsible for that. And then, of course, I asked him about different things, Yuba County 5. But yeah, so it was cool that I got to talk to the guy, and he was very open. And I don't believe he was involved. And before I thought, yeah, maybe. But after talking to him, I don't think he had any involvement. What happened to the boys or the fires? But but the people are out there. That's my point. They're still around.
Yeah, she was saying like they were trying to shut the program down. So if the fire incident was related to,
it was just this guy, the coach told me this person he thinks did it just had animosity towards the whole thing,
Wow.
and especially Larson that was burned alive.
That's
it involved an affair and this kind of thing. Big shock, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I'll do a show on that because I just talked to him 3 or 4 weeks ago and I haven't even put it out. People that I know on the back channel, I gave a copy of my notes from it, but I haven't done a show on it.
Yeah,
but man, that's good. I'm glad. But Nicky digging into Riverside on top of all the great Cooper stuff he's been doing. Ross killing it. 1,000 subs. So congrats to Ross on hitting that. And that's just another note. The links to Ross's channel are in the comments. Planet's Filmworks. Nicky's channel, Finding DB Cooper, and Nicky and I, we need to do a live on your channel all about Tina Bar. No suspects, but just Tina Bar conspiracies would be good.
Yeah, let's do it, man. That'll be fun, man. I'll put it I'll put it on my thing, and we'll schedule it up. I'd love to do that since we've done some good work figuring out the whole George thing, and
we did. We found that out because you contacted Brian after I told you about the German Shepherd. I'm going to contact Brian Ingram, and you did, and he remembered the dog.
Awesome.
He goes,
he's the one that told him his name was George. Yep.
George.
Yeah, he was skittish. Yep.
Yeah, the dog was skittish. But what's interesting is when Brian found the money, I think that George was not there that day that he found the money.
Which actually makes sense because if he was skittish, they were going down with their aunt and then his cousin. So they're like a pretty. They had the kids there, so it was a pretty, it was a family, kind of a family outing, and it was like probably a little bit too rambunctious, probably with the kids there to have George there. He probably took them there, just him and George when it was mellow, nobody there, and he just kind of let them roam the beach. So that's probably why he didn't take him on the family outing, because he probably figured it was going to be too much action for him.
Too much action, and there's a lot of interesting stuff though. And we'll have to talk about the fire that happened at the Ingram's place, because they lived in a second story place in I think Vancouver, and it burned. Yeah, there was a fire like not long after Brian found the money. There was a mysterious fire.
It was an interesting kind of sequence of events for the Ingrams. I mean, they moved down from Oklahoma to I believe Oklahoma to Vancouver. Staying with their sister. Staying at Dwayne's sister's house, and then they end up finding the money, and then their house, then where they were living, gets burned down, and it just seems like it was just a crazy shitstorm of events that just kind of rained down on them. But Brian's a great guy. He's been so helpful, and kind of telling me what he remembers, and anything that he doesn't recall or doesn't, he just says, I don't know, and he knows how much time and effort resources, money has been put in to try to figure out, the Tina Bar mystery. So, he's always like, look, if I don't, he's like, I understand that. So if I don't know something, I'm not gonna tell you. And
leads you in the wrong,
he's
leads you
kind
down
of
the wrong path.
right, and he realizes how his memory was very young at the time. So he hasn't just gone off
8
his
years
memory.
old.
Like he's cross-referenced with his dad and his mom, with everyone that was involved in the thing.
the primaries.
Cousin, so he's cross-referenced to try to, be solid on what he remembers.
I can't remember stuff with 8 years old unless it was real significant, someone passing away, or
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that was definitely a significant event. That's something you're not going to forget. So
no, this was good, guys. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been too long, and we'll do something again soon.
yeah,
but
great jamming with you guys.
You guys got me off of BB because I was never been real hard on anything with Riverside, but you had good points about BB. I just think he's probably kind of a jerk back then or whatever, but that doesn't mean he did it. And it's like you said, just some of this stuff got told over the years and made him look like he's a better suspect than he is. But
exactly, and that's why Riverside's
looking
back at that stuff, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, this looks good."
You got to
but they don't realize this was totally probably fabricated crap from Bud Kelly. I mean, from Bud Kelly, right? Yeah.
When Kelly went away, they should have just re-pulled the whole thing and took a whole new, fresh perspective look at it. Okay, like what direction was he going in, and was there anything else that? But anyway, Nicky's doing great on Riverside. I'm passing the
he's doing great
him,
stuff.
That's we're gonna indoctrinate him.
And then what you found earlier, Ross, that was good. That was interesting. That poster.
Yeah, the Blood Lord thing is crazy. So
with that Zodiac, that's a clear cross circle.
With the line, the way he draws the lines outside the circle. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, people are finding good stuff all the time.
I'm going to do a short on that. I'm surprised Richard, because I expect, like, whenever I find something, I'm like, okay, Richard's got to have the article, right? And he was like, no, I didn't write one on that. And I was like, whoa, crap. So I just expected he would have been all over that. You know what I mean? So I'll try to do a short video on it or something. But appreciate
definitely.
Drew. Push me over the 1K.
Planet X Filmworks, check it out. Nicky's channel, Finding DB Cooper, check it out. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. And if we missed some of your questions, put them again in the comment section after this loads, and we'll check them out.
We can all hit the comments. Appreciate Drew, Nicky. Talk to you boys soon. We'll
do right on. Appreciate you, fellas. All right.
Have a good night, gents.
Over,
have a beer for me.
Over and out, boys. Been a pleasure. Right. Talk to you.
Shout out to the